If the book of African history were a book of 1,000 pages, the story of our enslavement begins on page 996, and it's only 2 pages long. Welcome to the Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. Dr. Clarke reminded us that we should never begin our story with slavery. Dr. Clarke said that if you begin your history with slavery, everything since then looks like progress. So the purpose of the Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is to expand and enhance our understanding of African history, world history, and American history. At a time when people are literally trying to turn back the clock, we are encouraged by the words of Henrik Clarke, who told us that history is the clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. So we're going to tell the world what time it is. And these are self-liberatory times. We're not waiting for somebody else to liberate us. We're not waiting for somebody else to educate us. They can close the Department of Education because all they've been doing is miseducating us. So that closure is an opportunity for us to open up opportunities for us to do what we should have been doing all along. Dr. Henrik Clarke was a young man who was born and raised in the rural South. But when he was 10 years old, he read an article written by Arthur Schomburg. That article was entitled, "The Negro Digs Up His Past." And reading that article, a young Dr. Clarke realized for the first time in his life that he came from a people who have a history that's older than time itself. That article prompted Dr. Clarke to want to know more about his past, and he ultimately left the South, made his way to Harlem, where he made the acquaintance of Arthur Schomburg. And Schomburg taught a young 18-year-old Henrik Clarke how to study European history, how to study African history, and how to study world history, and synthesize all of these historical perspectives so that he could understand who he was in the world and how to better negotiate this world. And it was because of Henrik Clarke's love for African history and African people that I dedicate this Clarke Enhanced History Project to his living spirit. There's a total of 16 displays that comprise the Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project. One specific piece that I'm quite proud of documents milestones in African history, and it gives us a timeline of human accomplishments. And that timeline begins 300,000 years ago when Africans were the only human beings on the planet. And as we move along the timeline, we see periods when Africans begin to walk out of Africa and populate Asia 65,000 years ago. We also see an indication of another group of Africans walking out of East Africa and populating Western Asia, the landmass now known as Europe. You've got instances on the timeline that marks the development of consciousness and scientific achievements. The creation of naphtha playa, 7500 BCE. The creation of the first calendar, 365¼ days, 4230 BCE. The beginning of culture and civilization in Kemet, the country now known as Egypt. One of the main art pieces for the Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is a 25-foot-long mural called the Africa's Eyes Murals, and it documents 8,000 years of African excellence and success from the Nile to the Niger to the Potomac. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, this picture tells you very clearly who we were, who we are, and who we have the potential to become. And as I've been saying for years now, if the book of African history were a book of 1,000 pages, the story of our enslavement begins on page 996, and it's only 2 pages long. The purpose of the Henrik Clarke Enhanced History Project is to tell the story of the first 995 pages of African people on this planet. We have the exhibit here on the second floor of the Thurgood Marshall Center, located 1816 12th Street Northwest. It's free and open to the public. We encourage you to come and to free your mind, and then with a freed mind, with a historically grounded mind, it's your mission and your obligation to build a world that your children's children's children will inherit.